First of all, I just want to thank Floyd for inviting us for this session and also Abin for uh, conducting this subject. I think uh, pretty important in today's context, the way things are shaping up. So I will just dive into the presentation now. The presentation I've titled as micro because this is an idea that we have been working with. It deals with space, scale, and climate, which we will get to see in the projects. And this is a very interesting line I came across, and I think it's apt for the session. It says, "Man is small, and therefore small is beautiful." It's written by E.F. Schumacher. Uh, he's not an architect, it's nothing to do with architecture, but this has been written in reference to automation and economy. But what I extract out of this, the idea of scale and the accessibility to the locally available resources. And our interventions are pretty much revolving around the idea of man, and that's where we start looking at the relationships, like what relationships we uh, uh, kind of try to establish. So, in the urban context, first there are relationships between people and people, and these are some really wonderful paintings from pre-independence. In fact, the British were interested in our living patterns, and that's how they documented this. Then, secondly, what becomes important is this idea of the object that the people inhabit and how that starts relating with the scale of the space. And thirdly, the environment and obviously the climate, because here you see like a temporary pavilion, but this activity can even happen under a tree. And that, in fact, takes me to another idea of, if you see, we as human beings have the gift of hands, and that is something which we can use and do many activities. And uh, I've just used the example of a Swiss knife because that's what it does. Uh, and if a human being is so diverse, then why do we design buildings that just perform one function? So in that uh, context, I will just play this little video that shows the light box. That's the first project that we did 5 years ago. Yeah, and in so the Lightbox was is a part of the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations, and this is a pretext written to the Lightbox by the UN, and I would just read the gist out of it, just to make infrastructure more, just to use infrastructure in a way that the cities are safer for girls and women, and thus allowing them to travel safely from their homes to schools, workplaces, or social events. That is primarily the intention of this project. And so these are some live precedents we encountered when the project was under construction, and this clearly states the entire problem, this one picture. And yeah, so that's the site that we were given, the one that you saw in the film. So the corporation showed us like three different sites, but we selected this. And what was interesting is the moment we strapped the site with this plastic tape, the concept of resting started appearing within the site, because before no one sat under the tree but the moment we defined it with the plastic strip, people started inhabiting that, and at that moment the concept was kind of successful in a way. And this is the same visual of the central area. So the atmosphere still remains the same as when the building was not there. That's the diagram of the light box. So the black area is the central space, and towards the ends are the two toilet blocks. That's the plan. We have the toilets and the resting space. For me, this is not a project of a toilet, but in fact, the central space, which means nothing, is actually the real project, because that is something it allows to interact with the city and the people, and has many more layers to express. And that's how the transparent skin encloses the central area, which still doesn't define it with a very solid surface, but it allows one to see through. So if you see the atmosphere inside the restroom and the city, it's the same. So in a way, it tries to kind of interact with the outside. Similarly, from the other side, where the tree kind of cuts through the roof, and the lot of natural light and ventilation is there within the space. And this is a drawing just expressing many layers of the project in terms of the architecture. So we tried the same variant we tried to build for the Western Railways. It did not get built, but it had a similar quality. And yeah, so these are some renders from there. And going ahead, we created a family of restrooms. So within the city, there will be many spaces, like there are different spaces where one can locate these restrooms. So we thought there could be variants like small, medium, large, and extra large. So the large is the one that we saw, which is currently built. We replicated 14 units within the city of Thane. And that's again the diagram. So later we went on and we are still working on this idea, like how this diagram of Lightbox can postulate itself and mean many more infrastructural elements within the cities, not just toilets, but there could be many other like small infrastructure, which has to do with small scale industry and domestic jobs. So there are various permutations and combinations one can see. And the next issue we started encountering was of the truck drivers, because we started working on a project and then we realized that the the truck driver community is falling short of amenities, and as a result of that, the number of truck drivers per 1,000 trucks are getting reduced. And this project is a reaction to that. This project is called as Pause Restrooms, which is located on the Bombay-Goa highway. That's pretty much how it's laid out. It has multiple access points, so you have a choice. When you enter the campus, you have a choice where to go. These are some pictures of the main facade. And that's how you enter it into the spaces. The spaces are designed in a very domestic character, though the building is very contemporary, but you have tried to design it in a way that people can inhabit these spaces. These are the interiors. That's the entry to the female toilet. Inside spaces. Particularly for this project, I thought the signage system becomes very important because one has to communicate with the users, because there won't be like a full-time watchman present who can guide people across. So we had conceived the signages in 2 different languages. So all the age groups and different people, different community members can understand this. This is some iconography that's developed. Then the door metal signs. Then these are some programs we included within this facility, like a grooming center and tuck shop, because that was the necessity of the truck drivers, because that was one requirement. A grooming center can help them to kind of rejuvenate and carry on their journey. The recreational spaces, if you see, the beds are very traditional, like what they feel comfortable, but the building is modern, so we try to blend the objects with the building. And that's the side facade, like that's how this facility looks like. And this project has like a full-time staff who kind of takes care of the entire facility. They are kind of trained to clean. Yeah, so that was the reaction to the problem, and I think I'll just quickly jump on to the. So this is how the building was conceived. We have a parallelogram and then divided into 2 triangles. The triangles were used for parking, and the blue triangles are used for parking, and then the remaining triangle was the building. So in fact, this house was like a set of many. This village was a set of many houses, and each house offered various activities. Like one house offered food, the other house offered entertainment, relaxation. So that's how this village was conceived. I'll just quickly run through. The time is up, so I'll just show you like the last project, which is again in reference to this. That's a transient housing for again the truck drivers. This is only a housing project where we try to create like shared facilities where there are common facilities as well as housing for the truck drivers, where to create an affordable and optimum unit design, we tried to create houses where 8 truck drivers can occupy at a time, and then another 8 and another 8. The shared common walls, so construction becomes optimum, and that's how it's laid out. And yeah, and so these are the common courts where they can live, sleep, and interact. So this is more like a transient housing on rental basis. So like maybe they can just pay like a minimum wage of like 250 or 500 and stay for a night. And so here you can see the idea of micro as a climate has been expressed, and that's what we are trying to do through many of our projects. And those are the common facilities for the entire community. It's very basic. These are like dining and kitchen facilities, and the recreational spaces on the roof as well as on the ground. And yeah, yeah. So this is how it's laid out. It's a very small project, but the intent and the vision is something to do with a larger narrative. And this is something I would like to share. I mean, this was written by Korea, with whom I worked for like a brief period, and it says we are only as big as the question we address. And this, to my mind, is the central riveting fact of life of architects in the third world. The size of the project or the value of project we are working on, but the nature of questions these projects raise, I think that is something we must try to confront, and that allows us to grow not only as architects but as people. And in fact, this is a privilege for the people who are in the tropical climate, because we are living under the sun constantly. And that's what allows us to express these many layers of architecture. Okay. Thank you.